Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning if you are on the West Coast. We have a bunch of folks just logging in. We'll get started in just a moment. Uh, right now, Amy and myself, we're excited for this webinar, but we were just actually chatting before. When we're talking about MOPS and strategic, how you strategically scale your MOPS, but we were just talking about the new Marketo release that's coming out that was just announced.
Yeah.
Yeah, what Amy, you were just talking about the executable campaigns.
Yeah. It's funny. I think, Jeff, even as I grow in my marketing ops career and I'm leading a team and I'm doing more strategy, I think I'll always be a Marketo nerd. And I get really excited about these release notes. They just released one, and I think tomorrow actually is the release webinar. And they released executable campaigns in last quarter, which is a game changer. If you're not familiar with that, it's similar to a request campaign, but the campaign that calls the executing campaign waits until the executed campaign finishes before it does the rest of it. So you're not worried about race conditions. And now you'll be able to nest those executable campaigns. I mean, don't you think this completely changes the way you could set up your entire operational architecture of Marketo?
The race condition stuff is crazy. I mean, like what you run into in Marketo, you just can't get it unless you have like a whole bunch of request campaigns, right? Going from one to the next. So this changes things.
Yeah, I used an executable campaign in a program. We have a quiz on our website, and it's like a embedded iframe from a different tool. And after somebody fills out the form, we want to send them an email. But first, the form results come in as numbers. And then I have an executable campaign that translates those numbers into levels. And then those levels change into a segmentation. So the email that somebody gets, you have to wait until the numbers go to levels go to segmentation, which happens pretty fast, but not instantaneously. So we wait for the executable campaign and then come back and then send the email. So I know that translation's happened before the email goes out. And so the confidence of that is really amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, we could have maybe that's our next webinar. We'll go through that stuff. But we'll get started. We're gonna get started in just a second. But I just wanted to finish another example, Amy. We see sometimes even with our own instance where people come in, but they're not the lead assignment happens over in Salesforce, and you don't want to send out the alerts until you have the owners, the lead owners defined. So that's a way that you can kind of wait until those owners are defined, and then once that comes back from Salesforce, and then send the alerts.
Yeah, and the other thing that's being released this quarter is this is an awkward term for it, single flow action in person detail, basically meaning that when you're looking at a person record, you can click and send an action. For me, the sync to Salesforce is going to be a game changer, because sometimes I am looking to try to figure out oh, why didn't this sync? I fixed something, can it sync again? And then I don't have to go back to the database, search for them and click on them. I can do it from from the person record. And I think that's going to really save us a lot of time. A few minutes that's going to add up to a lot of time.
A lot of time. All right, well, speaking of a lot of time, we're going to talk about how you can save a lot of time. We, as marketing operations professionals, it can be a challenge to really scale the team. How do you scale the team internally, externally, and what are the definitions of different roles? We're going to get into that today. But a couple of housekeeping items that we'll just cover real quick. This session is being recorded, so if you wanted to share it with other folks later, you'll get this afterwards. And to ask any questions, you can type those at any point into the question box or email hello@digitalpi.com. But really, any questions, type them into the question box, and we will go ahead and address those at the end. So I will give some quick introductions. I'm Jeff Coveney, CMO here at DigitalPi. Live here in Boston, and sunny day out here today. So we're excited. I'm excited to have this conversation with you, Amy. Amy, I'll let you introduce yourself.
For sure. My name is Amy Goldfine. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the head of marketing operations at Iterable, based out of the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm a 3-time Marketo champion and 2-time digital pie performer. And I'm just super excited to be here to talk about my experiences. I've been trying to scale marketing operations and working in marketing technology since around 2013. And I've tried a lot of different things. I've been where all of you are. I don't know any marketing operations person that doesn't feel like they have too much to do and not enough resources. So I'm really excited to, give y'all some options and tell you about my experience.
Yeah, Amy, I'm just waiting for you to like run for mayor or something somewhere. I mean, you do so much in so many different areas.
I get a lot of help. I can't take credit for all of it.
Yeah. All right. So I guess first up, we're going to go before we even start. We're going to have a poll here. So let's go ahead and run that.
So what are we going to be asking them, Jeff?
We are asking them. All right, here we go. How are you leveraging external resources for marketing today? So how are you building your team leveraging external resources? And you have all your answers here. So we'll go ahead and wait another 5 seconds, and then we will show the results.
I'm excited to see, what people are doing. It's always interesting to see when we have these webinars to see, what the audience is doing, what their experiences are. We can certainly build upon that.
All right, why don't we go ahead and see those results? They're really small for me. I have to look in there. Amy, can you see those results?
I can. I do need new glasses, but fortunately these are big enough for me. Looks like 45%, so almost half of the audience is not currently leveraging any external resources. We've got almost a fifth of people are doing either email or landing page design, which really makes sense. That's a really common thing to outsource. 41% for overall marketing operations. Kind of low, I'm surprised, only 32% for implementation. That's something I typically see a little bit higher, but everybody's different. And then 14% for reporting, which kind of makes sense. Usually you're doing some of that stuff in-house.
I love seeing all this. So great, we can talk through, we're going to talk through a lot of these particular areas today. And why don't we head and go to the agenda. So we're kind of breaking this down into 4 different areas. So we're going to look at how to approach MOPS. There's a centralized approach and a decentralized approach. We'll go into what that means. Pros and cons of looking at a center of excellence, because there certainly are some pros and there certainly are some cons. Once you know the roles, how do you build that right team? There are different approaches, internal, external. What are those roles? And Amy's going to share some of her successes along the way. She has some great results she's going to share at the end and some tips of a hybrid approach that she's taken at Iterable. So a little bit of background on kind of where we, why we're here today. I mean, almost all of our clients have similarities in that there are issues with marketing ops. Amy, you mentioned it earlier, right? Like, how do you do more with the resources that you have? So hearing stories from different people, it helps you gain insights on what you can do with your own marketing operations. And Amy, this is why you're here today, to share some of your wisdom in this area. So if we think about everything that's been done in Marketo, it's evolved over the years. And Amy, you have been evolving with it over the years. Can you talk a little bit about where you started here with Iterable and how you got here?
Yeah, for sure. So in my own personal experience, I've worked for a couple different companies in different various configurations of in-house agency, centralized, decentralized, which we'll all talk about. But I've been in Iterable for almost 2 years. And prior to me being there, we were using a different marketing automation tool that was just really not scaling with us. It just couldn't support the activities we wanted to do. Everything was really slow and manual to do campaign ops. Editing emails was really manual. We didn't have like website cookie UTM tracking. The forms weren't right. Salesforce campaign, UTMs, lead sources, everything was messy. We didn't have a great Salesforce sync. That was really a big problem. And there was not just these inefficiencies that just bother ops, right? But like the inbound process of demo request to inbound team took forever. And so a little over 2 years ago, we decided we needed a better tool. We picked I say we, this is before me, but you know, I take responsibility for everything in Interval. So we got Marketo and decided to engage Digital Pie for implementation. And 2 years later, we're still a Digital Pie client, having engaged a couple of different SOWs in statement of work in various different areas that I'm really excited to talk to everybody about.
Yeah, especially the team stuff, how you're growing that. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Sometimes when you think about marketing operations, you think about just marketing ops, but really there's like a whole bunch of different roles that exist. And sometimes within your own organization, hey, you're the Marketo person, right? You're just, but it goes well beyond that. So, Amy, can you talk a little bit about how you've seen these roles within your organization?
Yeah, for sure. So I think any marketing ops professional who's talked to another marketing ops professional or has looked at job descriptions realizes there's such a wide variety of things that you can do within marketing ops and things that fall into marketing ops between different companies or even within two roles at the same company. So I think breaking it down to these 4 quadrants is a really helpful mental model. So the first is implementations and migrations, both talking about your main tool, something like Marketo, but then also, adding and growing and adjusting your tool stack. That's a really key part of making sure you do something right the first time, because that foundation of how those tools are implemented, especially your marketing automation platform, is really, really key to your success. And not to be a downer, but mistakes you make early on are going to haunt you later.
Yeah, we're going to dive into this a little bit deeper later on in the presentation too. So.
For sure. And spoiler alert, I don't actually like doing Marketo implementations. I've been doing this stuff for a long time. I still advocate for using professionals. So don't feel bad if you feel like, oh, I don't know how to implement Marketo. It's fine. There's not actually a ton of people who are great at it, but that's why you can always get help. So the next thing is platform operations. And I think of that as everything running your MarTech, as well as like the strategy behind everything. So it's not just implementing tools, but how do those tools integrate? It is your data strategy. It is everything that, if you're a Marketo user, in the operational programs, everything from like lead scoring and sourcing to data management to administrative stuff. And then as you grow in marketing ops, that also is platform ops is also just including like marketing operations strategy and what you're working on and where your team is going. Campaign ops is what actually many people think marketing ops is only. So if you've ever been somewhere where people think that all you do is send emails, that is a campaign ops perception that you have. And so campaign ops is everything from sending emails to implementing webinars to setting up gated content, setting up your events. Anytime you're taking a marketing initiative and implementing it in your digital platforms, that is campaign ops. And the fourth thing,
that's a different role, right? Like that is totally different.
Yeah.
And that mix up, right? People think of that as marketing operations, but it's not. It's the execution of the campaigns where marketing ops is like, part of the platform ops, running scoring and infrastructure.
There's some people who do great implementations and migrations who don't have the like executional skills to do campaign ops. There's some people, campaign ops is not necessarily a junior role. I think we often like give it to junior people because it's more rinse and repeat, but like you can be a senior campaign ops specialist and just rock that and make that more efficient. You know, and part of campaign ops is also setting up your templates and tokenizing and all the process around the campaign ops is just as important as actually doing the execution. And then the last thing is custom development, which is I think often something you forget about, especially because many of us, like me, cannot actually do it. But that's like coding your landing pages, your coding your emails, web hooks, weird custom stuff you have on your forms, you know, anything that requires actually writing code rather than using, you know, using a visual editor like something in Marketo.
Yeah. So I guess the message here, Amy, is there are roles. There's not, and this is going to help the audience out here. It's going to help you guys think about how you can staff your team moving forward and not trying to bring everything into one role.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go into decentralized versus centralized. What does it all mean, and why what the different models are? So there's one model, the centralized approach. Let's start with that. And this is where you have, you're running marketing operations and campaign. If you want to look at the pure sense of it, it's running all the operations, marketing operations and campaign operations from a central area, and that's going to get you, much, quality, consistency. You don't have to train all the remote users and worry about them importing lists and them, that messing everything up. So there's some pros to that, right? And you might have somebody located in the UK, somebody located, in the US and Canada, and everything goes through some central, central place. But there are drawbacks too. I mean,
I think you're right, Jeff, that like campaign ops, it gives you so much, or centralized campaign ops gives you so much more control. If you are a control freak, that might make you feel better because you know that the people implementing your webinars and your emails and everything are doing it right. And when you train somebody, you won't have to train one person or a small group of people. It's not constantly trying to make sure that a large group of people know how to do everything, but it can make things slow down. Somebody's got a webinar, they want to set it up, they have to fill out a form, they have to wait for the campaign ops team, there's SLAs. It can create some tensions between ops and the rest of your marketing team, because it can feel like marketing ops is a roadblock, especially if marketing ops is not outwardly showing the efficiencies and the increased accuracy that comes from the centralized approach.
It takes longer, right? So if a company's thinking about the process, consistency, better, KPIs that are all consistent, that's that. But it does, that con is a big one, right? Like time to market with, some emerging companies that are growing quickly. I think we're talking about one shortly. With your own, this might not always be a fit.
Yeah, I will say, like, the centralized approach, if you have a really good centralized approach, you can move very quickly under like special circumstances. When I was at Thousand Eyes, we came in Monday morning and there had been a event over the weekend that we could really capitalize on from like a content perspective. We came in Monday morning and they were like, we're doing a webinar on Thursday. And I was like, we're doing what? We dropped everything. We had this beautifully orchestrated, plan, and we got the landing page live by 1 p.m. And we had first email out Tuesday, second email went out the morning of the event on Thursday. We had 3 times the number of registrations, and we still had a healthy attendance number. So if you have this beautiful ballet of centralization, you can actually like really make it work for you under duress. You just want to make sure that doesn't then become the standard.
Yeah, right. So let's switch to the decentralized approach, which is essentially giving more power to the users.
Yeah.
Right. You can have power that they can work pretty quickly. They have the flexibility for doing different things. I was talking to someone recently, and they're like, we can't do the it was somebody over in Europe, and they couldn't do that. They needed to be able to execute on their own, and they were using more of a hybrid. So things were set up for them by the centralized operations team, but then they were working on their own. So pros there.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
this is, candidly, this is what we have currently at Iterable. It's what we've had for a long time. Allows people to just do their work. If they wait too long and they wait till the last minute to set up their webinar, they're the person that has to feel the burden generally. So it doesn't put this like pressure on ops to execute things last minute. And it allows people to gain new skills. I mean, we have some people who I've seen who have really like grown in their marketing ops, and I'm like, hey, you'd be great at this. Like, if you ever want to, grow into an ops role, I'd love to talk to you about it. I think it gives people, an opportunity to try different things. On the flip side, if you have people who don't like doing it or are not good at it, it's going to decrease their job satisfaction. Could make your data messy. I occasionally find, oh, hey, this program doesn't have any sales, associated Salesforce campaign members because the person forgot that step, or there's like a token issue and they might not see the results, but and what worries me is that I might not catch it. And there might be all these data issues that I'll never see until later. We're like, why is there no ROI from this event? Well, because, there was a, chain of command that was broken. The other thing that I think people forget about decentralized is it doesn't mean no campaign ops work for the ops team. It just changes the campaign ops work. It goes from execution to enablement. So you still have to like create program templates, tokens, documentation. You actually have to write way more documentation. Because if I'm writing a checklist for myself, look, for the record, I always follow checklists. I don't do that kind of stuff from memory. I don't think it's good practice, but like my checklist is very short. It's just boom, boom, boom. My training doc is like for webinars. Oh my God, it's like 10 pages long because it's got screenshots that are highlighted and every single detail because I don't know who's doing it. And they, I want to make sure they don't run into any issues. The other thing is people do run into issues. You have people who might be less skilled or have not encountered something before, and then they come to you and you might have to stop what you're doing because they're trying to get something out, and you want to be there to support people. So
training's the big thing, right? I mean, like we've seen where some business owners are going in, they're launching a webinar or they're doing something in the system. Usually it's with list imports. And something goes in wrong, and you were talking, Amy, about the progression not working because something didn't trigger. It could almost take you as long to troubleshoot the issue and fix the data as it would have been to launch the campaign. So
yeah.
If you're considering the approach, just know you really need to train folks.
Yeah. You got to really lock down your user permissions. Depending upon the tools you have, that might be easier or more complicated. I find it really frustrating. Some tools only have 2 user levels, either admin or super basic, and you may need a level that's somewhere in the middle. Like, I'm an admin, the entire company is a user, but like I want like 5 marketing people to be somewhere in the middle where they can like update some things, but they can't touch the integration. Not that I think that my marketing users are gonna go in there, but just from like a governance perspective, that can be really challenging.
All right, well, let's get to your path.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what we have at Iterable is primarily decentralized. It's as I mentioned, it's what we've always done, and it's what has scaled with us to this point. When we got Marketo when I came in, I'd never actually used a decentralized model before, but I wasn't really interested in coming in, all new processes, all new tool, and changing a model. And we also don't have a headcount for centralization. And I came in and I was very clear, and I was like, I do not do campaign ops. There is a firewall. Unless it's something really specialized, I don't do it. So that really like has a dividing line.
Did anyone know when you were doing that, like what campaign ops was?
Every interview I went on, I drew this stuff out for people on a whiteboard. So I was like, this is what marketing ops is. This is what I'm great at. This is what I do not do. And this is these are areas of growth for me. So we decentralized campaign ops. The only time that we centralize is for things that are like really specialized. So working on like a referral program right now. That's like a one-off thing. You know, our big conference Activate, like I don't, you know, I don't expect somebody to figure out how to set that up on their own. That's very, very specialized. And we have most of our like email is done decentralized. You know, users get to set up their own emails, but we do have a senior manager on the demand gen team who's sort of like the email strategist and email best practices and helps train people on that, who's, you know, really great partner to me. You know, from a, we also, I would say, have somewhat of like a hybrid tool ownership where, you know, I own the marketing automation platform, right? Salesforce admin owns Salesforce, but for a lot of tools, the marketing team leads own like, they own the tool, I own the integration. So I'll give you an example. We just integrated, you started using a new direct mail tool, and I was there for the evaluation. I evaluated like the data side to make sure the data would sync the right way, and I understood that, but like marketing cared about the user experience and whether it was gonna like actually meet their needs. They implemented all the different like, you know, sends and campaigns in the tool. They're responsible for training the marketing and sales users. I am just worrying about the data to make sure that we can track it. So, you know, that's actually been great that I'm happy to give up that control, because ultimately, like, I have fewer, for like user experience stuff, I have like fewer requirements. I don't say I don't care, but like, it's just not, I'm not the right person to be making those decisions. I'm
Right,
the one.
you can only do so much. So, anyways, so we think back, decentralized for you.
Yeah.
And then I thought that was a great tip for everybody watching was go use a whiteboard and then explain the campaign ops versus the marketing ops.
Yeah.
We are going to take another quick poll here. So we're going to run this in just a second.
What are we going to be asking on this one?
We are asking
About the model, that makes sense.
Yeah, which model? This is another exciting. I don't know what everyone's going to say on this one. I'm excited to see the answers here.
I'm really about the people who are going to say no model. My marketing operations needs organizing. If I'm hoping for the people who are saying that you have that you're able to get something out of this. If nothing, just thinking about what the different giving you some structure to think about it. I think that's what's like. I'm hoping people take away about from this is like the different lenses they can look at things,
right,
as well as just different ways to resource. You know, I sometimes will get really stuck. I'm like, I don't have the team to do this, or I'm not set up, I can't do this. And somebody will like, well, what if we try X, or what if we work with this team or with this agency? And then I'm like, oh, yes. So I think just hopefully giving people these like ideas and kind of sparking will help.
Yeah, with that, let's see the results.
Yeah, so it looks like the highest is 41% is centralized, only 11% decentralized. That is interesting. I would be so curious about, you know, obviously we can't go super deep into these, but you know, what size and what the you know, structure of the marketing orgs are. And then 33% are doing hybrid, which makes sense. And then 15% of people, they need their marketing ops needs organizing. So I hope this is helpful for you, for everybody, but for the 15% of you especially. Alrighty.
All right, we're gonna get onto the next section here. So we're gonna talk about, you know, what's the model. We talked about the models, right? We of decentralized versus centralized, but no matter what you're doing with that, you have to think about then how you're going to build that team, the internal versus external way of doing things. So there's some different approaches to teams, and there's kind of the in-house model, there's the agency model, and then there's the hybrid model. I'll just start talking about one of these, and Amy, jump in, you know, whenever you want to jump in on this. But you know, the in-house, your pros. I mean, you basically have control over that employee. You're going to have better, you know, security. It's an internal person. They're going to be able to work processes internally that an agency couldn't work on. You're going to have them gaining in-house, you know, the experience that's going to let them drive more things. But they do lack some expertise. You know, yeah. We want to talk a little bit about that, Amy.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Jeff. When you have somebody in-house, like they really understand your company, they're in all those meetings, they're in all those casual conversations. They really understand your needs, your business. They're able to like really understand, sort of like the business strategy, the data strategy. But, first of all, hiring people is rough. I don't know if any of y'all have been trying to hire right now, but it's always hot for marketing ops talent. But 2021 is like super super on fire, and so it could be, you could be waiting months to hire somebody, and then you got to train them up, and you don't want to throw somebody in the deep end. You want to make sure they like learn your company and learn your tech stack and everything. And also there are some things that you're not going to need a full head count for. So like, I was talking about dev stuff, like we're not big enough to need a full-time dev, and it would be a waste of resources. So, and when you work with, so yeah, that's kind of all I got to say about in-house.
Yeah, no, and then so that's kind of the in-house piece, and then there's the agency approach, which brings in specialized expertise, a lot of flexibility to scale up and scale down, and it helps organizations grow faster without having to add headcount. I think that was a big thing you would talk about, Amy, right? You had a nice tip around that when we were talking before.
I've worked with a couple different agencies at a couple different companies I've worked at, and I have found that finance is way more likely to give you money for an agency than they are to open a headcount. I don't understand, this is like beyond my understanding of inner workings of companies, but I think there's often budget for agencies, contractors, stuff like that you can't get for headcount. So sometimes if you're feeling really just resource constrained, that can be something that can, relieve the pressure. And that expertise is totally right. Like, yeah, I think I'm really good at Marketo. I'm probably not the level of, a consultant. I also don't have these like frameworks. One thing I really like about agencies is they come in and they have, Digital Pie has the gold standard workbook. I look back to that all the time. That shows me all my lead sources. It shows me statuses, shows me channels. That's like our, gold standard. That's kind of like our, how everything was set up when we implemented not just Marketo, but when we sort of like rethought marketing operations 2 years ago. Like I said, you can, usually get agency help very quickly. But also, in terms of what they bring is you're like basically buying their IP. So, Digital Pie has a way that they do implementations. Agencies have a way that they do lead scoring, right? Or, the way they think about life cycle, and they bring that to you. And they have spent hours and hours and hours whiteboarding, testing, working on these things that like you're probably not going to bring unless you previously worked in an agency yourself. But it's not always perfect. You have less control. You have people working in your system who may be a system expert, but they're not an expert in your company. So, they also, like, depending upon your company's like security comfort, I've definitely had a lot of trouble. Worked for a very security, I mean, every company should be security conscious, but I worked for a company that made it very difficult for me to hire contractors, and made us jump through a lot of hoops and kind of like handicapped us. That was really challenging.
But it's important though, right? I mean, looking at somebody coming in and accessing your data, you're looking and you make sure they have the processes, whether or not they're SOC compliant, or they have straight processes that they're going to bring in security. That it's different than having no process at all, and you just don't want that within your organization.
But yeah, you certainly, it can be really nice to have somebody come in, whether you just need help with some day-to-day stuff, you need help with campaign ops, you need a certain thing integrated, you want to redo something like lead score or lead lifecycle, or you just, need that extra person, or extra team, in your corner.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about in-house and agency, kind of those pros and cons. In reality, we usually don't see one or the other, because if you go all agency, you're going to have issues there. If you go all internal, you might not have the expertise. So usually it's some type of hybrid. And yeah, I mean, let's talk about that, about how you build that team from from leveraging a hybrid. So it doesn't matter if it's centralized or decentralized, you still need to think about those roles.
Yeah.
And, when we think about those 4 ways, these, we talked about these earlier, the implementation, the marketing ops, campaign ops, and custom development. If you take anything, one of the things to take away today is think about the roles, not just marketing operations, because there are different expertise levels in each one of these, and you might be able to staff internally or externally. It's that mix.
And if you're staffing whether you're thinking about internally or externally, there's also different ways, like whether that's staffing internal is somebody on your team, or you might get to borrow another team. And if you're staffing externally, there's different ways to structure your statement of work, to meet your needs.
All right, implementations and migrations.
Yeah,
let's talk about that. How you can leverage a team internally and externally.
Yeah, for sure. So, really depending upon the tool and its complexity and your team's expertise, there are definitely different ways to do this. As I mentioned, I really think that, for something like your marketing automation platform, either buying professional services through the platform or hiring a consultant or an agency, it's probably the way to go, unless you've done this a bunch of times, because like I said, this is something you don't want to mess up. And like I said, when we got Marketo, our VP of marketing and our director of demand gen had both worked with Digital Pie before, so they hired them for this. And I came in very thankful, because I came in, a few months later, and I was like, okay, who set up your instance? And they said Digital Pie, and I was like, great. I hadn't worked with Digital Pie before, but I do know many of their consultants, and knew that I felt really comfortable coming in. Look, anytime you come into a new company, there's always, monsters in the closet, but like I knew that our Marketo instance was going to be set up right, which was really great. And I know that like they got it implemented. I was talking to Henry, our head of demand gen, the other day, and I was like, how long did it take? He's like, I don't know, like 4 to 6 weeks. He's like, we didn't have to do hardly anything. Like Natalie ran some sessions. She like asked us a bunch of questions. Like we made some decisions, and then they just like ran with it and did the implementation. And I was like, that is what I like to hear.
Yeah, but when you think about an agency helping in this with their expertise and framework, it only works if the agency is working hand in hand with the client, right? So if you just, we've seen situations where it's implemented, but then the stakeholders internally, oh yeah, it's set up, and then it's just left there. It's like you left it the starting line. You've done everything to the start line, and it doesn't go on. So Amy, you were able to kind of take that to that next level, which was great.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that like when you're also thinking about like other tools, you can do the implementations in-house. You can delegate to somebody on your team if your team is growing, if you're not just a team of one, or we were implementing a website chat, and I was like, I don't have the bandwidth to do this. I was like, Natalie, can you take this? She's like, yes, I'm a subject matter expert. Cool, great.
All right, so we're going to be wrapping in about 10 minutes, and that's going to be when we'll address the Q&A. So if you have any questions, just type those, remember to type those in the chat box, and we'll address that at the end. Platform ops. So this is, making sure your system's running, right? How do you approach that, Amy?
Yeah, real hybrid approach here. So I let Digital Pie handle a lot of stuff that they implemented. So things like privacy and compliance and sourcing and scoring, especially privacy and compliance, because that's so complicated and it's so important. And I know Natalie understands it the best. I do a lot of platform ops myself. That's probably the thing that I personally like the most. And then, I just hired somebody on my team. Hi, Geraldine, I think you're on this. And she's also going to be doing some platform ops projects, but I still have Digital Pie in my back pocket. And, in the past, for example, I've hired agencies. We redid lead scoring. We redid our lead life cycle. So you can also, like, when you're kind of want to do these big structured projects, we've done that as well. And we've also, our user conference this year, Activate, was a huge undertaking, and I kind of panicked when we decided on using a new tool that was going to be much more complicated. So, bringing in Digital Pie for that was really was a game changer.
Yeah, so the platform ops is a little bit of a hybrid for you. Campaign operations, you just talked about the Activate event. That's a
I guess
big event. I mean, how do you handle the campaign? You're mostly doing it internally.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, the marketing team is all trained in using Marketo and all the rest of our tools. I have extensive documentation, center of excellence. I have a Slack channel called Ask MOps where people can ask help. We have ticketing, so it's very structured. But as I mentioned, Activate, which I guess is sort of like platform ops and campaign ops.
yeah, it's a little bit of a mix, right? Because it's very complex, but it's a campaign.
Yeah, last year I set everything up myself. This year I was like, I'm gonna have my hands full with the data strategy, with all the meetings, with going planning. And, I was able to like liaise with my internal teams and have those conversations and then talk to Natalie and have Natalie do the execution. So, that's been really great. And, we were able, you can structure SOWs in lots of different ways. I've done it before where you just have it project based, and then you can have it time and materials. Really depends on what you want and also what finance will pay for. Sometimes finance will not do something that's unstructured. But for Activate, for example, it was great. We did time and materials. I wasn't sure how many hours it's going to be. We didn't use all of them, so then we got to use the hours on something else. So that worked out really nicely for us.
Yeah, working together, that worked really well, Amy.
Yeah.
Custom development. So you don't have a group of developers there that work on Marketo, I know. So how do you approach this?
We, basically, I mean, we have a web team, but and they're great, but they don't know how to do like the super custom. We have like this UTM customization on our web forms. Web developers, spoiler alert, don't know how to code emails. Coding emails is very, very specific. So we have Digital Pie Flex templates, which I really highly recommend. I have tried doing webhooks on my own. I'm not good at it. I do believe in growth mindset, but I also believe in figuring out what's worth your time. And like dev is not something that I want to get into. Now, my direct report, maybe she wants to get into dev and like she wants to spend the time on that, and that's an area of growth, and then we would talk about that and that would be fine. But like generally, like I outsource that stuff. I know that like an agency or a consultant is just gonna do that. That's their thing. They know all the gotchas like that. That's been great for us.
You've done all this, Amy. You have taken Iterables, Marketo, and platform ops to the next level. Let's dive into some of how you're measuring success.
Yeah. As I mentioned, we really love the Flex templates, and it's really like doubled our ability to get emails out, especially when you're having a decentralized team. You need a tool that doesn't, or you need templates that don't require hand coding, that are really plug and play. And we've really, I've used lots of different Marketo templates. I didn't realize until I used the Flex templates that you could have these cool like toggles and drop downs, and it's just like your brand colors, you don't have to remember the hex codes. They're just a drop down. Like that is great. Let the marketers focus on writing and designing the emails, not coding them. As I mentioned, pre-Marketo and pre-using Digital Pie, we did not have a great demo, inbound demo handoff, and that's key, right? Speed to lead, we all know you gotta have it. So by adding Marketo, by setting it up correctly with the Salesforce sync and the handoff and accounting for, routing in Salesforce and everything, it takes a third of the time from demo request to inbound handoff, and that's key because you lose people. You could lose people in those 20 minutes. And I think like the last thing that that really we saved so much time on was when we did our rebrand. I was like, oh my God, we have to redo all of our confirmation emails, and I was like, this is nuts. And Natalie was like, oh, why don't we just switch to using a centralized confirmation email? And this was like mind blowing. If you want to know more about this, that I was on that Digital Pie Top Tips last summer, presenting about dry cleaning your Marketo instance, and I talked about this, but by moving to a centralized confirmation email, we were able to save like at least 75% of the build time. There was a lot of stuff to do on rebrand, like fiddling with, 50 or 60 confirmation emails was not a good use of time. So this was really, really a game changer.
You need a lot of wine for that. But then the confirmation emails might not look good by the time you get to the 80 second one. So, there are numbers. You had some numbers on the last slide, but there are intangibles, right, that exist that you can't measure.
Yeah.
You're talking a little bit about the customer experience.
And I think it's really important to think about internal customer service as well as external customer service. And like I said, demo request routing being reliable is a much better customer experience for our prospects, but also that internal customer experience, it's a better experience for my marketing users. And also, for implementing something like Marketo Sales Insight gives visibility to the rest of the org, what's going on with marketing. So people aren't constantly asking me, why did this person MQL? They can just look at it on MSI. And I think for me, the big thing that I can't measure in numbers, but I can only sort of measure in like my heart, is the confidence that I have. Like the sync between our marketing automation platform and our CRM is solid. I'm confident that our compliance and our opt-ins are working. We have our like tracking from the website to campaign, to the form to campaign member is, that's incredible. We did not have that before. And the last thing that I think that I've gotten back is time. I don't have to spend as much time managing my tech stack. I can spend more time doing strategy. I can do more time spend more time developing my team. It's just been able to like give me breathing room and allow me to move marketing operations forward instead of just constantly kind of feeling like I'm stuck trying to be catching up on things.
Yeah, and I love, Amy, you just brought someone onto your team, right? So that's an exciting development, for you, right? And like now you don't have to do everything, but you're not able to do that unless you're able to prove the success that you've had to be able to build, to
by like
that other person.
having, showing that we have so much work to do that, and it doesn't mean that we're going to not be using agency work in the future. It just means we're going to keep adjusting, how we do things, and it's always evolving.
Great. Well, thanks, Amy, for all your insights. We're gonna wrap this up now and start to dive into any Q&A for the next couple of minutes. So I think takeaways from this, from what you've said, Amy, is continue these models. Follow a model and be consistent. Understand the different roles that exist. It's not just one role that does everything. You need to think about different roles. You've had success, particularly in a decentralized model, but that might not be for everyone, right? So, I don't know, what are some of your final thoughts, Amy?
I think that it's just the most important thing is to constantly like think about how your marketing operations team is structured and think about evolving. Try to be forward thinking. Try to be creative, and hopefully I've been able to give you all some ideas about how you could possibly adjust your resourcing so that you can do more with less.
Got it. All right. Well, why don't we start to jump into some of the Q&A? Jessica, you on with some of the questions that have come in?
I am.
All right. Shoot away.
So we're going to start with a high-level question. How do I get my operations team to think beyond Marketo and look at ops more holistically?
Oh, that's a good one for you, Amy.
That's one I think about a lot, and it was something that I realized after I'd been here for close to a year, and somebody said to me, "Well, is marketing ops just Marketo?" And I was like, "No." I was kind of feeling I realized I had a perception problem, and then I had to really think bigger. So part of it for me, I was so Marketo focused when I was trying to, the train was moving when I got here. So it was like trying to get everybody working properly in it while we were, had it live. I had to just really focus on that. But I was able to take a step back and think, okay, it's not just the tools, it's the strategy, it's the roadmap, it's the future planning, it's making sure that you're in sync with what the rest of the company's doing. Whether or not you're in a RevOps org or not, like making sure that you're in line with what sales ops is doing is really important. And for me, I think the big shift was when my marketing ops roadmap became not just projects that I work on, but or that my, now my team works on, but something that I'm not actually owning, but that is important to marketing that other people in RevOps are working on. So it may be something that, we had something that customer marketing needed done in Salesforce. So I set up the project in Asana. I set up the intro meeting. I made sure marketing understood this, what Salesforce admin needed, and Salesforce admin understood what marketing needed, but I'm not actually doing that work. And previously I would have been kind of like, well, this is not a Marketo thing. It's I can't, Salesforce, not my area of expertise. But now I'm like, how can I help marketing get what they need from the ops team? And how can I help the ops team understand what marketing's needs are?
Yeah, I mean, if you think of, Marketo can sometimes be your binky, right? You want Marketo and you know it so well, but the technology is growing. So, push yourself beyond just Marketo, because that's just not going to help you, right now with your current position, but that gives you a growth opportunity outside your organization, sometime in the future. What's better to say, I am the best Marketo person in the world? That's pretty good though, but how about, I brought more strategy to the organization with leveraging Marketo and this tool and this tool. That provides a lot more value that can get you higher up. And it's awesome that you've done that, Amy, because hey, you now have one hire, you got one person and the next person's coming. So
spoiler alert, I have another open headcount if anybody would like to work with me.
Headcount with Amy. All right, so if any of you looking,
yeah,
contact Amy. All right, what do we got for the next question, Jess?
So another really good one from Enrico. Thoughts on having to pivot between a centralized and decentralized model based on changes in your structure or your personnel? How do you manage that?
I think what really helps is to do a pulse check and have conversations with people, whether you do something like a formal poll or whether you're just talking to all the different stakeholders. And without saying, oh, I think it's time to move to this model, or I think it's time to do that model, really having a lot of humility and going in and trying to understand people's needs and pain points, and then gathering all that and then trying to figure out what model will meet that. I think so many of us, you'll be in a decentralized model and you're like, I hate this, I have no control, I want to move to centralized. Or maybe centralized and you're like, I hate that people are giving me stuff last minute. Don't think, oh, I need to move to the other. Think, what is the the issues, and how do I meet people's needs? And really, when you're trying to whatever change you want to make, whatever you're trying to pitch it to everybody else, the key is what's in it for them. Ultimately, they don't care if you're up until 11 o'clock doing, setting up a webinar. What they care is that their webinars get out in a timely manner, and there's the least amount of friction. So not to say that the people you work with are horrible, but they care about different things than you do, and you have to be able to position it in a way that they see a benefit for them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just knowing your organization and getting the internal feel. I mean, think about which one, based on your based on how your organization is set up, what are you a candidate for? So if and this might vary, you might have some centralized and some decentralized parts, but if you're part of an organization that's super high on process and compatibility, everything's consistent with data from US to Europe to Asia Pac, that's a candidate for a centralized model where you have a certain process. But if it's a smaller organization where you got to be really nimble, don't care about process isn't part of the equation. If you don't have process, centralized is going to be really, really tough to move to.
Yeah, for sure. What else we got?
So these next couple I'm going to ask in kind of a quick succession. We had a couple different people asking about specifics and where something fits in that grand structure, if you're looking at a centralized or a centralized team. So Amy, I'm just going to spit some different topics to you and you can let me know where you think those fit.
Okay.
Awesome. So where does campaign ops typically sit? Is it under marketing ops or under marketing?
I would think it would be, if you're talking about centralized campaign ops, that's a really good question. When I was, so I think there's also, you can have the RevOps conversation, might change some of that, but no, I think campaign ops should always sit under marketing ops, whether or not you're, God, I don't know. Actually, I'm going back and forth. This is when you throw something.
It's a great question because you could argue it either way, right? I mean, if marketing ops is doing everything, it's obvious that it should be under campaign ops.
Yeah.
But if not, I mean, we've seen it go different. I mean, we've seen it work different ways because it might be the business owners are working directly with the campaign the campaign operations if it's external. But if campaign ops is really being run by the business owners, then it's sitting within the business unit.
I think my ultimate answer is it depends upon your company. It also might depend upon what you can get approval for. So for example, like I may have mentioned, I'm in RevOps. And if we wanted to move towards a more centralized campaign ops model, I might have a better time pitching that if the person stayed in marketing, because maybe we have like several people who campaign ops becomes half their job, but they have another like marketing role. So I think it may depend like where they fit. It might be half campaign ops, half project management. It may be half campaign ops, half inbound. There's lots of options. So I guess I wouldn't pigeonhole yourself into what's right. It's what's right for your org. Sorry, that's not a very satisfying answer, but it's true.
I think we got time for one more question, Jess.
Yeah, so I'm going to skip over some of those specifics, and if anyone wants to talk about those, we'll be sure to follow up offline. And so I wanted to finish with, let me see. For a centralized team, how do you evaluate if the team structure is working or not? When do you know it's time for a change?
Yeah, I think again, like doing a pulse check, talking to people, like talking to the people who are doing the campaign ops work, talking to the stakeholders, thinking about how your team is working, talking to everybody and seeing like where the issues are and how comfortable people are with it, and then what their goals are, and then figuring out like, can we make some changes to our current process, or do we need better training? Do we need better documentation? Do we need better expectations? Is my request form not giving me enough information, etc. And then you can weigh that against your other options.
Yeah, I mean, Amy talked about knowing the organization and the process. I mean, one thing to also look at is, if you were thinking about going from centralized to decentralized, because maybe the people aren't, the process isn't working or things are taking too long, you could always look to run a pilot with the decentralized group. Pick some users that you think you could, a geography or a business unit you think you can train up, and see if a decentralized approach would work. Use them as a model. If it's working, maybe expand that out.
That's such a good idea. You don't have to make a huge switch. And it may be that if you want to move, if you're, fully decentralized or fully centralized and you're thinking about moving, you don't have to move 100% at once or even ever, depending upon the department or the region or the skill set of people. You can, adjust the model for, what works for your team.
Great. Well, Amy, thank you so much for joining today. You have shared a lot of your wisdom and experience. Congratulations on continuing to excel at Iterable, and congrats on a new hire. And for all of you out there, thank you very much for attending, and we will send this out to all of you as a recording. We also have an ebook that describes everything that we talked about today in terms of centralized versus decentralized. So that might be a good resource for you to leverage, to research things further within your organization.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Jeff. And thank you all so much for watching. It's been really great talking about this.
Yeah. Thanks. Bye, everyone.